Welcome back. This is the second devlog for Reading Room, a VR app that helps you stay focused while reading real books in the real world, also potentially schoolwork or other things, we'll see. This is the second devlog, so to cover where we've been up until now, we have a basic VR app with a simple placeholder button, or eventually you won't need the button. When we hit the button, you can see down here in the left-hand corner, it's processing OCR text for a static image that I have that has some text in it from a book, from a chapter of a book. That text now displays on this little tablet. And if we hit the button multiple times, it handles retries and things like that all properly. There's some bad artifacts here with the OCR. But now from here, what's the next step? So I think the next steps are, let's see if we can get this running on VR headset. I have an Oculus Quest 2. See if we can swap in then real hands for these little placeholder cubes that I'm holding. And then have it so you can actually have this be like a book that is on the table that you can then pick up and interact with from there. And then after that, then maybe circle back and start focusing on quality. But for now, let's see if I can get this actually running on the headset, because I've only ever gotten it working in the simulator, and see if we can, get it to be something you can hold in your hand. So here we are, a couple of coding sessions and days later. I had decided to go ahead and refactor the book into its own scene. And that worked, but then after I created it, I realized it needed to be a pickable object so that I could pick it up in VR. And so I tried to convert that, and in the process I broke everything. So then I basically had to rebuild it twice. But that is now working. So now you can't really see it from this view. Let's see here. Yeah, so you can see there's sort of this tablet here on the table. And if we zoom in, there's the placeholder text on it. We still have the button, it's off to the side a bit. We now have these very basic hands coming in. Did some other refactoring, moved the code around for where we keep track of the OCR. So now that's the OCR manager in its own script. And if I click there, it's the same logic as before. But now it's just living in its own sort of global script that's sort of reachable from anywhere. So then I can decide separately when we call the OCR work to process new text from a new image. But yeah, let's go take a look and see what this looks like. Okay, here we are in VR. I've got hands now. I can click and point. I also have the ability to grab and pick this up. Let's get that pretty close. See the readability there. And now I can actually reach out and hit the button. Text is loading. Hold this for a second. It should take about 12 seconds still. And there we go, there's the text. In fact, there's all the text that we're trying to read. Again, I can still see there's some, I wonder what that is. Is that a special character? I know in the case of this letter A here, that's actually a quote. So start and end quotes for a quoted section. Sometimes like this is a letter I, but it's treated as a vertical slash. Some of this is just top of page chapter information. See chapter 22, but that H is actually a dash. So yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out quality, but that's on the to-do list. What I don't know, that's funny. And then I can put it on the table, so I can let it go and drop it. Now next on the to-do list is see if I can get that text to be 2 columns instead of 1, since it is coming from a book that has 2 pages. Can I get that split properly and consistently? I also want to bring in more test data, so more pictures of more pages from a book, this time bring in a whole chapter actually, and make it so that clicking this button cycles through all that test data so I can see how it's behaving in different scenarios. And then from there, we'll see. Here we have a visualization of what the OCR is doing. Now originally the text I was getting out of OCR was just plain text. I think it did kind of have some separators in it, but for the most part, it was just sort of the raw text. It does offer structured ways to get structured data. In this case, this is Hawker, or I'm calling it Hawker. I think it's HOCR. And so it's an HOCR file that it can spit out. And it's basically structured HTML. And it includes bounding box information, so it can kind of tell you where on the page it found that bit of text that it translated. Now, originally, when I was looking at Hawker, my belief was that it could tell you separate pages, so that it would have the ability to split the text by left page, right page. And it does appear to have that, but I think now that I've dug deeper, really that paging feature is meant for multi-file TIFF files, where you can have a TIFF file that has multiple pages in it that are already broken out. And then when it's processing those, it would process them separately, and you would get multiple pages that way. Out of the box, Tesseract doesn't actually have the ability to split based on pages. But what I do know is that given this bounding box information, and we even have some things like we have line information, and then we have paragraphs, and then we have entire other text areas, that I can use that knowledge to figure out on my own where the pages are separated. And you can see there's even some junk up here, like there's a green box up here, some green boxes here, over here on the right. So it's detecting those as characters, which is going to end up in the output data, and including these little stars, but it's not real data, it's data we want to exclude. So using this bounding box information and looking at the heights of the bounding boxes, I can also probably determine that this is a title, that the text for it should be higher, taller text, and that these are page numbers down here and treat those as page numbers. So I think there's a number of things we can do here. But for starters, I really just wanted to get the text as two separate pages instead of one big clump of text. So I started down that road and brought in XML parser from Godot, brought in the UTF-8 buffer from the OCR result that we're getting. And then I kind of set up a couple of classes here to manage pages, having page 1, page 2, looping over the parser's contents. And then when we detect that we've hit a line, which is like the class name for that span within a div that's inside the Hawker HTML, when we get a line, I have functions here for going and parsing that line. And then when we get to a certain place where we've detected that when we try to add a line to the current page, but it fails, then start a new page, which would be page 2. And then for now, just worry about page 1, page 2, and send those over to the game state, which would then add them to the scene. So that's ended up being about 150 lines of code. And the way this is actually working then is the way we fail is when we see that the bounding box of the next bit of text, so we look at this bounding box, the next bounding box it's going to look at is going to be up here. And when we see that the start of that bounding box is to the right of the end of previous bounding box, then we kind of infer by a certain amount, right? I threw a little error in there by however many pixels. Then we kind of infer and assume it's the next page. So that's the approach I took for now. Let's go take a look and see how that looks. Okay, so here we are back in VR. I've made the book extra large just to make it more readable. I do need to do some work on the text spacing. I think it's like an extra bold type size here. But now we have two separate pages. And we've even actually gone ahead and cleaned up some of the other issues related to special characters that were coming in. So the text is a bit more readable. There's still some errors and mistakes. But now also if I hit the button again and we wait 10 seconds or so for it to process, we'll then have a new book, and again, 2 pages. This is the end of one chapter and the beginning of a new chapter, and this is a different book than the other book. So that's all working. And in fact, I've queued up an entire chapter of a book now. So if I press that button over and over again, I'll be able to cycle through different test data, see how things are performing. So things are mostly where they should be. Now I need to move on to maybe fixing quality. Actually, now that I've finished working through getting this broken out into 2 pages and working with Hawker for a bit, I'm realizing there's some limitations to what this is going to be able to do. And the approach that I took for splitting this out into 2 pages, I think long-term isn't going to be the right approach. So already I'm realizing I'm going to need to rewrite all that code. But I think I've got some clever ideas on how to go about that. I really don't want to try to use an AI to process the OCR, and I want to, if possible, avoid bringing in OpenCV to fix some of the issues that I'm seeing. But I think there may be a way to do it that's more of a clever UX approach to solving some of the processing issues I'm seeing. Anyway, something for another day, not for right now. And I don't want to spend too much time worrying about making the OCR perfect when there's many other things I need to worry about. So I think that's going to be a problem for future me. And from here, I think I'm going to end up probably moving on to making this space seem a lot more interesting and start doing things in the environment based on the text. So with that, I think we'll end this devlog. If you'd like to follow the project more closely, I stream at least twice per week to both Twitch and YouTube, where you can see me get deeper into the technical problems that I'm solving as I'm solving them. And I'll see you in the next one.